Last week, we wondered how much Todd Bowles would take when it comes to disciplining his team, and a matter of days later, we got our wish. Coach Bowles also wanted to see his team play team football in the fourth quarter, and in a matter of days, he got his wish. Coach Bowles said last week we're not a playoff contender. Well, after beating the Chiefs on Sunday, is that still the case? We'll discuss it all as Jets Uncovered on the Ourlads Football Radio Network starts now. All right, it's Tuesday, December 5th, 2017. Welcome to another edition of Jets Uncovered on the Ourlads Football Radio Network at ourlads.com. I'm Greg DePalma. Joining me from rotowire.com, sports writer Jan Levine. And Jan, there are a lot of fans out there and even some New York media types not very pleased with the way that the team played last week, lost another fourth quarter. We talked all about that, but they can't be unpleased anymore now, can they?
No, I mean, they've answered some questions, although I do think probably every fan after the 40-yard completion to Tyreek Hill was going, uh-oh, here we go again. But they were able to prevent the Chiefs from getting in the end zone there and maintain the 38-31 lead, greatly aided by several penalties on that last scoring drive by New York, both in terms of on the TD drive as well as on the two-point conversion, because if not, instead, you're looking at maybe a 33-31 lead with Catanzaro hitting the field goal and changes the whole tone and tenor of that game in terms of what Kansas City has to drive for. So Kansas City gave the Jets a lot of gifts. The Jets finally took advantage of those gifts. And as we've seen, though, a lot this year, the Jets have been the one giving the gifts in terms of really silly and stupid penalties costing them wins. So it's nice to be on the other side of the equation for once and get a win. And they were able to hold on, pick up a hugely needed victory, and a victory that, if you read a lot of the comments after the game, I'm sure you'll get into it in a couple of minutes with the benching of Darren Lee for the whole game and Mo Wilkerson for the first 14-21 of the first quarter, of Todd Bowles really sending a consistent message, which is what he sent all year, and the players' reaction to that and how well they reacted to what he did.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we were hoping to see discipline enforced. Now, of course, part of that was seeing some of the discipline enforced from results on the field, even though the kid, the corner they just picked up was benched after he gave up the big touchdown to Hill. But still, I mean, that's a fringe player anyway. But hey, look, discipline's discipline. I'm glad he started enforcing it. That's really nice to see. We'll find out whether or not. Look, Wilkerson, I don't know. I think it's becoming. Look, it doesn't look. They're not going to trade him, of course. So because of that, it's going to come down to whether they bring him back or not. And I think the way the situation is with the Jets already having enough players on the line to run their defense, I just wonder what they're going to do. I mean, but do they lose Sheldon Richardson and then lose Muhammad Wilkerson and then just go with Leonard Williams? I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world, especially for a team that could use a little bit more of that money to spend on linebackers if they're going to be playing a 3-4, and especially if they start to invest more in Todd Bowles. I think that's the trick, is that I don't look, that's the other thing, having to hear some of the media, especially your boy from FAN, talk about how much he thinks Todd Bowles is terrible and he should be fired. Look, this is up to the fans to believe what they want to believe based on the media and their opinions on the Jets and Todd Bowles. But you've heard us say all season that I haven't criticized Todd Bowles since probably week 2 or week 3, and I think he's done a very good job. So that's what we think on this show. They think on those shows that he should be fired and he's terrible. We're going to let you fans decide who you think is right, because I'm sorry, but I know we're right. And I know Todd Bowles is going to get his extension. He's going not only will he get his extension, not only does he deserve his extension, but that again, I think that is a reason why if you're going to reinvest more money and believe that Bowles will be here for a few years, then you'll know that you're going to run a 3-4 defense for a few years. You have to start taking care of those linebackers more than the defensive line, especially when you already have Leonard Williams up front. You don't need Wilkerson too, especially if he's going to be late to meetings and things of that nature.
Well, I think in terms of who you're bringing back, I mean, obviously Williams is number one, and while he doesn't have a lot of sacks, he's pretty up in the league in terms of quarterback pressures. And if I remember correctly, he had one of the most ridiculous stats in terms of the most frequent quarterback pressures compared to numbers of sacks in terms of a low number of sacks. So if he keeps getting that pressure, eventually he'll break through. I think Coney Ely is another guy you're going to end up bringing back, just because of what you've seen so far from him this year. But I do think based upon the dead cap space, based upon what you need to necessarily do in terms of building your team moving forward, in terms of the messaging, I do think that you have no choice but to eat the dead cap space and let him go, even if it does cost you both Richardson and Mo Wilkerson in the same year, which is not something that we ever would have projected. But it's a situation that they just find themselves in. And right now, if you're going to basically have guys either on the bus or off the bus, and you have a majority of the team that's now on the bus, you can't have a guy that's a rogue player. And right now, I'd have to say that in terms of the makeup and construction of this team, Wilkerson is that rogue player. And just addressing your comment of my boys from WFAN, I shared with you the podcast last week that they had because I grossly disagreed with it, which I think you knew already. I know that Benigno and those guys love to rip on Bowles, and I know he's not the most exciting guy, and I'll be first to admit that I didn't necessarily have a great affinity for bringing him back, but I thought he at least deserved another year to be brought back. But given what you hear from almost every man on this team, from guys like Morris Claiborne, from guys like Kelvin Beachum, from other guys on the team, what we don't see behind the scenes is really more telling than what we see in front of the media. He's not the most exciting guy in front of the media. I'd love to see him get angry. I'd love to see him get pissed off. I'd love to see when Safarian Jenkins' TDs were overturned and throwing an absolute fit and getting in the referee's face. That's just not Bowles' personality. But what you've seen is a team that's prepared every week. What you also see is a team that's learned their lessons from last year, and there's still a lot more to learn. And what you also see as well is, or if you heard, if you find the Joe Gibbs podcast, he raved about Todd Bowles. And to me, Gibbs as a talent evaluator and a guy whose view I trust, that's good enough for me if a guy like Joe Gibbs is singing the praises of a guy like Todd Bowles.
Well, look, I talk about this many years about how with players and coaches, whether or not we agree or disagree with them coming back, and this is the same thing with players, that I'm willing to give everybody a second chance, especially if I think, you know what, Sean McVay's out there. Let's get rid of Bowles. Let's go get him. Okay, you stick with Bowles. All right, as we said in the beginning of the year, let's give him another chance. That's what we said in the preseason. It's what we said in the beginning of the season. He hasn't been a coach very long, but he has to learn. Let's make sure. As long as he continues to learn, that's what you want from your coach. And the same thing. Remember, we talked about what his best move was bringing in all those excellent assistant coaches. And this is also part of the reason why I think when people are complaining about the offense doing this or the play calling there, I think it's absolutely asinine with what we're seeing with Josh McCown. Okay, with Josh McCown playing the best game of his year, and maybe the best game he's ever played in his life. He had a couple of good games and a nice season in Chicago once. But, I mean, this is probably the best game he's ever had in his career. The guy is on verge of retirement next year or two. He's like one hit away from retirement. And you've got a first-year, number one in charge coordinator in Morton, who has done a fantastic job in putting McCown in these spots with the receivers that he has on this team, with bringing in new guys. This team was, nobody thought this team was going to be any good. So Bowles did an excellent job in bringing in really good assistant coaches, including Morton. And that's why I've been, for all the losses over the past several weeks, that's the reason why I've been calm. It's the reason why I don't get upset. It's because this is what I see. I see improvement. I see that this team is on the verge. This team is coming. You're not going to see the full results until next season at best, but I can see it. I've been watching enough football in my life to know when a good thing is coming. I see it's coming, and I think for the first time in a while, the fans probably saw just a little of that on Sunday.
Absolutely. Play calling, I like the aggressiveness. I like you can argue you don't love the fact that you went, runs all the time inside the one. I wonder if that's a counter attack to what happened the prior week when they threw 3 times inside at the 1 yard line, although we both think that Safarian Jenkins got in the end zone on one of those. But in this time, they stuck with the run. They stuck with the They stuck with the game plan in terms of not altering. I'm not happy with the slow start. I'm not happy with the 14 zip being behind very early on. But you have to love the adjustments that the team made defensively and offensively, especially offensively when they went down the field twice and all of a sudden a 14 zip deficit became a 14-14 tie. And in the fourth quarter, what you saw was him relying on Curse and Robbie Anderson, mixing in a little Forte, mixing in Elijah McGuire, mixing in a bit of Bilal Powell, changing things up in terms of offensively. And I don't think that you can't be anything but happy that what we've seen so far that John Morton is the offensive coordinator, one of the best hires, at least now, what it looks like a year in, than what we've seen. Although let's go back in reverse. We said the same about Chan-Gailey in the past. We said the same about some of the other offensive coordinators. So let's see what plays out down the road. But you have to be encouraged by what you've seen so far in the first 12 games of the season.
Yeah, and again, I think that the what really has to, and this is again why that's why I have tempered my disappointment in all the losses recently, trying to look through and see ahead of what's going on here. What are they are the losses? Do they make sense? Because losses can make sense. They make sense when you see a young team, when you see an organization that went out in the offseason and got rid of all the dead weight, 95% of the dead weight. Then they get rid of Sheldon Richardson at the last minute, getting the second round draft pick. Then all of a sudden in that deal, you get Javon Curse as well. I mean, Jermaine Curse, what an excellent deal that was by McCagnon. And so you got all these young guys. You get Adams, you get May, you get all these other young players that are starting to develop a nice little chemistry with each other, a new culture with everybody. So I like the fact that we've got this new coaching staff with all these new young players. And this is what happens when, like you said, when you get down 14-0 at this late in the season, when you're 4-7, most teams will wilt. Most teams will go away. But this team does not go away. This team is forging ahead. This team is not necessarily playing like, oh, if we don't win this game, or if we don't win, if we don't make the playoffs, the season's a wash. That's not the way their mindset is. They're just going out there every week is a different week. It's another week to learn. It's another week to get better. And the ultimate goal is not this year. It's next year. It's the year after. It's building this chemistry and this new culture inside the room that I haven't seen here for a while, probably since the Bill Parcells days. And that's a Todd Bowles guy. I haven't seen it. So I'm starting to see glimpses of that. I'm excited about it. Now that the wins are coming, that's even more reason to be excited. I think this is going to be, without question, the most exciting offseason that Jet fans have had in a long time.
Well, it's cap space. It's cash. It's
draft picks and cap
space.
Available
cap space. It's the player availability. It's who might be out there quarterback. And you and I have both discussed. I mean, I love Baker Mayfield. I love the moxie. Now, again, there's a lot of questions in terms of what we want to do in terms of whether or not he's the right guy or not the right guy. But he's the kind of guy that I really like in terms of if you fall behind in terms of, I mean by behind in terms of draft position, that's kind of one of those things associated with, what you're going to look for moving forward. So you have the Allens and obviously the suck for Sam, as we talked about the road if he comes out, and you have Rosen. Mayfield's the kind of guy. So we'll have to see what kind of happens with it. But that's the kind of guy I would like to have. But again, I think we need another cornerback. We all agree we could use another offensive lineman. And, of course, if we move on from Mo,
another linebacker.
We need
another
pass
lineman.
Rusher. And that's going to be the focus, and then kind of see where you go from there.
Well, again, the whole thing that we talked about with Mayfield was the fact that, again, the key was, and this is why I said I'll take any of those quarterbacks, but I wanted to stress that a couple of reasons I wanted Mayfield was because one of them was the fact that I just, as you said, whether it's you want to call it moxie or just call it, I think that the personality that would go perfectly in New York for a franchise starving for identity in the league. That's the reason why I look at him and go, boy, I think he would be a perfect fit for this franchise. He won't be a perfect fit for every franchise, but I think he would be the perfect fit for this franchise, especially because, again, as I said before, Jets are not going to have to move up to get him. So if Sam Darnold, who I think now, from what I hear, the people I'm talking to, I think people are starting to – I think more and more people I'm talking to, they think he's coming out. Josh Rosen's coming out. Josh Allen's coming out. You've got Rudolph. So you are going to have, if they all come out, then you are definitely, where the Jets are picking, the Jets are going to be in a perfect position to get a quarterback. And I'm going to be happy with just about any of the quarterbacks they get. Any of those 4 quarterbacks, I think I'm going to be pretty happy with whoever they get. And that's kind of the reason why I think this is also going to be a very exciting offseason. And I'm looking forward to it. Look, we got a little ways to go. The Jets should win this week. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, this is definitely win week. So 6-7, in the AFC, there's some possibilities there for the Jets to. And look, when I'm talking playoff possibilities, I'm talking about it just for fun. And hopefully they win this week, and we talk about how fun it will be to even be in this discussion about playing in a meaningful game, in their 14th game of the season. That's fun. But I want to temper the fans out there. Don't, if they win 2 in a row, don't be like you were a couple of weeks ago. Oh, I'm upset if we lose and I'm pissed off, and just have fun with it, man. Just think about what the future's about and don't get all pissed off, and just enjoy the moment. Next year, the year after, that's when you get upset if you lose.
Well, here's the thing. It's all about motivation, right? It's all about what you're looking for in your team. And again, it sounds very easy to say, hey, yeah, don't be upset if we lose. But again, if you're a fan, you do get upset. You do get enmeshed in what's going on. You do get caught up in everything. And that's why when something like this happens, then you're like, oh, wow, we really blew. Like, you look at the team, you're 5-7. Well, we could very easily be 7-5. And that's kind of what others bring up, and is disappointing, because if and again, Bowles addressed this on some of the, interviews you did. He said you can't obviously play the what if game, but of course as fans, we always do. And you look at the games where you blew fourth quarter leads, and even if you split those games or win one of those games, you're 6-6, and all of a sudden, you never know what's going to happen, right? So we're building towards something. We are looking to really build towards something. It's not just a 1-year goal. We got our appetite whetted under the Rex Ryan era when we went to 2 AFC championship games, and I thought both times we were going to win those games given where they were, and we're going to end up in the Super Bowl. This is one of those things you're long-term planning. There are pieces that they have now. There are more pieces that you need. Get another cornerback, as we said. Get an offensive lineman, end pass rusher, a quarterback. These are things that are somewhat available in free agency, but also hopefully available in the draft. And presuming you still have the growth associated. Still have that growth in those players that you expect to have, and you never know what's going to happen from year to year because growth is not always linear. You do figure we're building towards something that could be potentially special, and that's, as an organization, what you want to have. That wasn't in place the last several years. That's now a different mindset, which is the key. It's the Bowles and the Cagnon seem to have built a mindset on the team that was so clearly lacking last year.
All right. Well, next week, I'm pretty sure we're talking about another win next week, right?
I have learned my lesson in terms of counting victories when you expect them. I would say on paper, yes, this should be a victory.
Well, I'll say this: if they lose next week,
the Tampa game, never count anything.
Well, look, if they lose next week, then I'll go ahead and give the fans all the credit in the world if they want to get upset, because I would be upset if they lose this game. So, look, you can have one of those flat games. Every team has a flat game against a bad team. Every team. You can't have 2. Okay? And they won't have 2. So we'll talk next week about a win. I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate it, Jan. So enjoy the win. And we'll talk again next week. And looking forward to talking about more positive New York Jet news.
Sounds good to me. With sweet music to my ears, let's put it that way.
All right, Jan. Thanks. Talk to you next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, that's Jan Levine, and that's going to wrap it up here for another edition of Jets Uncovered on the Ourlads Football Radio Network at ourlads.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. That is where you can check out all of our alerts as far as when we're available on demand. Go to the ourlads.com website where all of our shows are. NFL shows, college football shows, fantasy shows, and much more. We're going to be big time, of course, in the off season. Not only is it huge for the Jets, but it's huge for everybody, but definitely for the Jets. So we'll be there with free agency and through the draft at Ourlads.com. For Jan Levine and Greg DePalma, thanks for tuning in to Jets Uncovered on the Ourlads Football Radio Network. We'll see you next time. Interchanging, mind control,